The following podcast is non-profit and is based on the IGCSE history curriculum. Welcome to another episode of my podcast, where in today's rather long episode, we will be looking at the causes of the Second World War. Now, Hitler's main foreign policy aims included abolish the Treaty of Versailles, create a German empire, and destroy communism. Firstly, let's look at whether Hitler achieved his first aim, abolish the Treaty of Versailles. One reason that he achieved this was that after a plebiscite, the Saarland was returned to Germany in 1935. Another reason was that Hitler had begun to build up armed forces and factories were ordered to begin manufacturing weapons, tanks, airplanes, and battleships. From 1935, more men were recruited into the army. Thirdly, Hitler marched into and reclaimed the Rhineland on the 7th of March 1936 without any conflict. And finally, he invaded Poland on the 1st of September 1939. However, there were some reasons why this was not achieved. Firstly, Germany had to make an agreement to get the Sudetenland through Britain's policy of appeasement. Secondly, he did not regain Memel, northern Schleswig, Ypres-Malmedy, or Alsace-Lorraine. Finally, his invasion of Poland led to Great Britain and France declaring war on Germany, something that Hitler had hoped would not happen. Now, create a German empire by uniting all German-speaking people into a greater Germany and creating Lebensraum, living space, by conquering land in Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union. One reason why this was achieved was that in 1935, German speakers in the Saar were reunited with Germany. Another reason was that Hitler encouraged Austrian Nazis to demand union with Germany, and in 1938, Hitler ordered soldiers to march into Austria, and they were able to take over. Thirdly, following the policy of appeasement, Britain and France agreed to give Hitler the Sudetenland in exchange for his promise not to invade any more countries. 4. On the 15th of March 1939, Hitler invaded the rest of Czechoslovakia. Finally, he invaded Poland on the 1st of September 1939. However, this led to Great Britain and France declaring war on Germany. Furthermore, this was not achieved as in August of 1939, Hitler made a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. This was also a reason why his goal of destroying communism was not achieved, as he became allies with the communist state he had aimed to destroy. Now, let's expand on the Saar plebiscite a little bit. Under the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, the Saar was put under the control of the League of Nations for 15 years. As promised by the treaty, after the 15 years, a plebiscite was held under supervision of soldiers sent by the League. In this vote, 90% voted to return to Germany, while 9% voted to remain under the League's control, and less than 0.5% voted to be controlled by France. Now on to the remilitarization of the Rhineland. In March 1936, Hitler risked being attacked by the Allies by moving troops into the Rhineland, as it clearly violated the terms of the Treaty of Versailles. It was believed to be a bluff. Allegedly, he had ordered the soldiers to withdraw if they met any opposition, which would have caused him humiliation and lost him the support of the German army. However, the Allies did not respond, as they were too worried about their empires due to the crisis in Abyssinia. Hitler had managed to maintain the support of the army while securing his western border, and he had successfully tested the Allies and the League. Next, the German involvement in the Spanish Civil War. In 1936, Spain had descended into civil war as the Socialists and Republicans, who had won control of the government in 1931, tried to abolish the monarchy. Hitler sent a squadron from the German Air Force called Luftwaffe to Spain, where they practiced a new tactic of dive-bombing towns instead of military targets, bringing fear and terror on the population. Hitler believed that if he was able to form a Spanish-Italian-German alliance, he would be able to weaken France by surrounding her. However, Franco and Hitler disliked each other, and Franco demanded that Spain be rewarded with overseas territories if they assisted Germany in the war. Despite Spain not becoming a German ally, Hitler was able to strengthen his relationship with Mussolini, and the war gave the German Air Force valuable experience which would help them to conquer Europe in World War II. Anschluss with Austria. Hitler wished to practice his policy of a united Germany with Austria, who were German-speaking. Many people in Austria supported this idea as their country's economy was weak. They believed that unification with Germany would make them stronger. In early 1938, Hitler had encouraged Austrian Nazis to stir up trouble and staged demonstrations and riots across the country. They called for unification with Germany. In a meeting with the Austrian leader, Kurt Schuschnigg, Hitler told him that the crisis would only be resolved if he accepted the Anschluss with Germany. He reluctantly agreed. However, in a last-minute attempt, he called a referendum for the people to decide whether to unite with Germany. Hitler worried that the Austrians would vote against the Anschluss and forced Schuschnigg to resign, appointing the leader of the Austrian Nazis in his place. In the elections, voters were watched over by German soldiers, and 99.75% of Austrians voted for the unification with Germany. This meant that Austria's army, weapons, rich deposits of valuable ores and resources were added to Germany's growing army and industry. By this point, it had become clear that Britain and France were unlikely to react, as Germany had broken yet another term of the Treaty of Versailles. Around this time, Britain were practicing their policy of appeasement, which is when a country is unwilling to support or defend a policy and give in to more demands to avoid war. Overall, this policy allowed Hitler to easily break the terms of the Treaty of Versailles, as they gave in to his demands to avoid war and was significant in increasing the power of Germany. Britain practiced their policy of appeasement on Czechoslovakia, which is known as the Sudetenland Crisis. The 3 million German speakers who lived in the Sudetenland area of Czechoslovakia claimed that the Czech government was not treating them fairly. Therefore, Hitler encouraged them to stir up trouble in Czechoslovakia and demand for them to be allowed to join with Germany. The Czech leader, Edvard Berns, became concerned that Hitler would invade his country, so he asked Britain and France to support him if it came to war. However, they were reluctant to do so, and Britain sent a politician to Czechoslovakia to recommend that certain parts be given to Germany. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain met with Hitler, declaring that the Czech government had agreed to give him certain parts of the Sudetenland. Hitler was unhappy with the settlement and demanded the whole of the Sudetenland. As Chamberlain refused, war seemed likely, so people in Britain began constructing air raid shelters. As a result, Mussolini helped to arrange a meeting, which became known as the Munich Agreement between Britain, France, and Germany in Munich in September 1938. It was agreed that Hitler be given the entire Sudetenland. As Chamberlain returned to Britain, he was saluted as a hero, as he was able to prevent war. German soldiers seized the Sudetenland on October 1, 1938, with no shots fired, and 2 days later, the Czech leader resigned. The world was shocked when Hitler and Stalin signed the Nazi-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact on the 23rd of August, 1939. They hated each other. Stalin hated Nazism, and Hitler hated communism. In the end, the countries turned on each other. But why did they sign the pact in the first place? One reason was because Stalin distrusted the West. He felt threatened by the capitalist countries of the West, fearing that they would form an alliance against the Soviet Union. He had joined the League of Nations, but soon lost faith as they did not act on German rearmament, or stop Mussolini's invasion of Abyssinia. As a result, Stalin had become disillusioned with Britain's policy of appeasement, believing that it encouraged German aggression and that Britain and France wanted to solve their problems by making the USSR and Germany destroy each other. In the end, Stalin realized that he needed to protect his country from invasion, so he tried to form an alliance with Britain. Nevertheless, this alliance failed to come about. The Soviet Union wished to negotiate a military alliance with Britain and France, which agreed that they would defend Eastern Europe together if the Germans attacked. However, it took Britain 6 weeks to reply to this offer from the Soviets, so Stalin began to believe that they were not serious about an alliance. Furthermore, one of the terms of the agreement suggested by Stalin was that the Soviets place soldiers in Poland to better defend Eastern Europe. This was a worry to Poland and Britain, as they believed that after the troops had been stationed there, they would never leave. Overall, the alliance was not made as Britain and the Soviets thought that each other were unreliable. While the British did not believe that the Soviets were strong enough to fight the Germans, the Soviets thought that the British would not protect Poland and that the USSR would be left to defend Eastern Europe on their own. The consequence of this was the non-aggression pact between Hitler and Stalin. Stalin knew that he would eventually need to fight the Germans, but his army was just not ready yet. He wanted to use the pact to gain time to build up his armed forces. Besides, he was interested in a secret protocol or clause in the agreement which meant that Germany and the USSR, starting from Poland, would divide the territory of Eastern Europe between them. Hitler believed that as Britain and France did not have the USSR as an ally, they would not declare war on Germany if they invaded Poland. However, this gamble of Hitler's failed when Britain and France declared war on Germany on the 3rd of September 1939. Finally, let's take a look at Hitler's role in causing World War II. Firstly, he had come up with a 25-point program. In this, he wished to obtain more land to create Lebensraum, or living space, for Germans. His aim was to abolish and reverse the Treaty of Versailles by expanding his military and reoccupying areas which were previously German. Finally, due to his anti-communism, he wished to wipe it out. Secondly, he had already laid out his foreign policy in Mein Kampf, which he had written in 1924 during his imprisonment. Yet again he had stated that he aimed to abolish and reverse the Treaty of Versailles by expanding his military and reoccupying areas which were previously German. He also aimed at uniting Germans and German speakers in Lebensraum, or living space, by expanding eastwards. Thirdly, in Hitler's 4-year plan, he had outlined the aims to gather supplies to prepare for war, begin conscription into the army, and rearm by opening factories and or changing outputs to manufacture military arms, essentially making Germany a war economy. Additionally, Hitler decided to enter into the Spanish Civil War, fighting for the nationalists. His aim was to give opportunity to his air forces to practice dive-bombing tactics, as he knew war was inevitable. Finally, in the Hossbach Memorandum, dated November 1937, Hitler told his generals to prepare for war and to be ready by 1940. Overall, in my opinion, it is quite evident that Hitler had planned this war to complete his agenda. It was not planned or mainly caused by any other country other than Hitler, and he did not just seize the opportunity. I believe that this is clear that he had planned the war. This is the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening.